Good afternoon, dear guests, and thank you for joining us here today at the Knowledge and Learning Commons here at the UN Library and Archives, Geneva. My name is Bolotnikov, and I'm here to welcome you to today's session and to our space dedicated to informal learning and knowledge sharing in a collaborative environment. So welcome to our event 3-2-1 Action, Communicate with Creative Videos in a digital era. We're super happy to have you here, both in person and online, for those joining us via WebEx or YouTube. And actually, for those joining us via WebEx, we have a short video for you, just to make sure that your experience is as easy as possible. So let's go on with the accessibility video.
Welcome to a Knowledge and Learning Commons online event. Here are a few accessibility features available on WebEx webinar to ensure you have the best experience with us today. At the bottom of your screen there is a menu bar with various settings. Click on the Robotic CC, WebEx Assistance, icon to enable closed captioning, and this open a tab on the right-hand side of your screen. This will allow you to get written transcription with full meeting, complete with clearly labeled speakers. Or you can select the second option in the menu bar, Closed Captioning, which will appear at the bottom of your screen, allowing you to easily follow along in the meeting with real-time captioning. WebEx allows you to receive live translation to multiple languages by clicking on the bottom arrow. If you would like to interact with us live, then raise your hand by navigating to the menu bar at the bottom of your screen and selecting the seventh option from the left side of the menu. Customize your own view to watch the event in your preference through selecting Layout at the top right side of your screen and customizing your video layouts to best suit your needs. For any further assistance or questions throughout the event, then chat with us directly by selecting the chat icon, second option from the right side of the menu bar. Keep an eye out on the chat for announcements from our team. WebEx is compatible with all screen readers and default keyboard shortcuts. Our team behind the scenes are here to answer you directly. Enjoy the event.
Okay, so hopefully that video was straightforward for all of you. Don't worry if you have any other questions or if any technical issues happen throughout the session, just go to the bottom right of your screen, and send out a message via the chat, and our wonderful team behind the scenes are ready to assist you. Okay, so the Commons here is a place, as we mentioned, of interaction. So we really want to hear what you think about this session. We also want you to participate in our quizzes and also send questions to our lovely speakers that I'm going to present in a couple of minutes. So to that effect, we're using today Mentimeter, an interactive tool. So for those who want to participate in our quizzes and want to send questions, please head on to menti.com and select the code 99823703, or if it's easier, you can also scan the QR code that you will find exactly right over here. And for those that are in the room, you actually have QR codes plastered all over the room, and both on the right and on the left, so whatever is easier for you. Just a quick reminder, as the session is only 1 hour long, we won't be able to answer every single question, so don't forget to give a huge thumbs up for your favorite ones. So the most popular ones actually do get answered. Okay, so having said all of this, I think it's time for us to try our first Menti question, just to see who's joining us. Okay, perfect, so we're already having answers. What is your job? What do you work as? Do you work in the public sector, in the private sector, maybe an international organization? Okay, so we have a great variety of jobs. It's actually amazing to see all the professional backgrounds that we have. It's amazing. Okay, phenomenal. We're very happy to have you all here with us. So let's continue with the learning objectives and what this session is all about today. So today's event is actually linked to World Innovation and Creativity Day. We'll be exploring the potential that videos have to impact our view of the world we live in, and also the creative and innovative ways in which we can basically share videos. It's also extremely important to know that videos can change our perception and question the status quo, and create these innovative ways to create engagement, so engagement through social media. All of these topics will be discussed with our lovely speakers, and I actually have a great panel for you today. First of all, we have Kruglikova with us. Kruglikova is the director of the Division of Conference Management at the United Nations, Geneva. We also have with us Bruce-Lockhart, editorial lead at the World Economic Forum. We have Isaias Hernandez joining us online. Isaias Hernandez is an environmental educator, a creator of Career Brown Vegan, and also a TikTok content creator. And last but certainly not least, we have Miladin, Bogetic, who actually takes care of social media here at the United Nations office at Geneva. So as you can see, we have a great panel of speakers, and also, if hopefully, they will actually give you all the secrets of social media and how to master social media and create a very impactful video online. So having said this, and just to make sure that also our speakers are aware of who is our audience, we have one more question to you. So head on to menti.com. And our question for you is, how often do you use videos? Okay, so I can see that we have a couple of boss levels. That's great to know. We also have a couple that dabble in videos, and some that don't know what videos are. It's okay. By the end of the session, we're hoping that every single one of you will learn something, and that it will be a great experience for you all. So having said all of this, I won't take the floor anymore, and let's head on now to our first speaker of the day, which is Anna Bruce-Lockhart, the editorial lead of the World Economic Forum. So Anna, thank you so much for joining us, and the stage is all yours.
Thank you. Almost forgot my clicker. Hello. It's lovely to be here today. Thank you very much for having me. I am Anna Bruce-Lockhart. I run the social video team at the World Economic Forum. Like many of you, I work in communications for an international organization. And over the past few years, we've been finessing our video approach. And we've learned a few things along the way, so I'd like to share some of those things with you today. May I have my slides, please? Click. Got it. Got it. Back to the beginning. Thank you. All right, so video storytelling at the World Economic Forum. Some of the points I'm going to go over in this presentation are, the moment the WEF woke up to video, can video change the world, what a video team looks like in our organization, our workflow, our resources, and how to make a great video according to our opinions. So, the story of video growth at the World Economic Forum has been one of incredible growth. I mean, really, when I started as a digital editor in 2013, we had a small platform. We were publishing about 3 blogs a week. And we'd be really, really happy if we got something like, I don't know, 20,000 page views on it by the end of the month. Now, it's a different story. I mean, we have a following of 30 million. We get close to 1 billion video views a year. On some platforms, we're outperforming The Economist and The New York Times. So, how did we do it? Video. Big surprise. But what kind of video? It's not every kind of video that can pull in millions and millions of views. It's not the web panels that we would publish to our YouTube platform after a conference or an event. It's not even the fancy brand films that are so beautiful and cinematic that we might play at the opening of a conference. This one was especially expensively produced and looks fabulous, but doesn't get quite the impact or the reach as one of our social videos. We call them social videos, of course, because they go primarily out onto social media. These are the short square videos that you may see pop up on your Twitter or your LinkedIn feed. They're short and snappy. They have an attractive headline, usually over an intriguing opening image, and they are designed to catch attention and spark engagement. So how do we do that? So the headline is often like a fascinating factoid. It could be an inspiring solution, something uplifting. It might be a heartwarming personal story. I'll go into that in a bit more detail later. So these incredible numbers we were getting on these videos told us one thing. In organizations like ours, we tend to communicate using words, but the numbers were telling us that humans love video. They love visuals. We're visual creatures. So here you can see, this is the dawn of video at the World Economic Forum. And the data really tells its own story. This is a cross-section of years that really showed our sudden kind of rise in audience growth. I don't know if you can see, but in 2015, that's when we started publishing at volume. So we were moving from perhaps 3 videos a week to suddenly 15. And you can see the sudden leap upwards. There's little spikes there that you can ignore. That's every January. And every January, of course, we have Davos, which is a huge spike in global attention to our content. But those kind of humps going up, that's the strategy shift. So that was 2015 when we increased the volume of our posting. But then in 2016, we really went all out on social video. So that's when we moved up from about 3 videos a week to 15. The rise in website traffic was immediate and has kept growing over the years as we have increased volume and spread across social platforms. So, excuse me while I adjust my pages. Nope. Voila. So, millions of views on social media platforms, all well and good. But how can you ensure that digital attention translates into something that furthers your communication strategy? At the Forum, our comms challenge is, like many international organizations, to increase engagement around the big challenges facing the world and to highlight the work that your organization is doing to help. We discovered that videos were really good for this purpose, especially when we paired them with this fancy marketing funnel here. So how does the marketing funnel work? At the top of the funnel, you can see the delightful, informative videos that we post across social media to catch as much attention as possible. Then hopefully that leads a fraction of the people who view that video to click through to your website. That's the middle of the funnel there. And once they're on your website, you can hopefully keep their attention and lead them to more demanding content, such as a new report or an upcoming event. You can even get them to subscribe, potentially, or to partner on some kind of project that you're involved in. So that's the marketing funnel. On top of that, we noticed that videos were giving us a kind of soft power. Not long ago, the social video team was called up to the boss's office, Klaus Schwab. He's the chairman of the World Economic Forum. And he wanted to tell us about 3 visitors he'd had in that previous week. One was a high-level job candidate, another was a trustee, and another was a large corporation that was considering taking up membership with the Forum. All 3 had told him that seeing our videos across social media had convinced them that the Forum was sort of a player worth working with, somebody worth collaborating with, someone worth taking note of. So that was great. Then we also started to notice that as well as soft power and audience growth, there was a kind of brand recognition that came with it too. So once our video platform started to develop, we started to come to the notice of big global players like YouTube and TikTok, TED-Ed, and Netflix. The last collaboration of which actually led us to win some film awards, which was great. So, all very good. But can videos have a wider impact? Beyond award ceremonies and audience growth and promoting the work of your organization, can they make the world a better place? We think they can, and we have some experience. During my time at the Forum, there have been a couple of instances where a video, just a video, has served as the catalyst for positive change in the world. Here's one. Doesn't look like much. At first you think, what on earth is that? Looks like a crocodile, but it's not. It's actually a biofence. It's a water barrier that Guatemala had started putting into their rivers to stop the plastic from going into the ocean. This video went viral on Facebook a few years ago. And after it did, the Guatemalan environment minister started to get questions from neighboring countries. They wanted to know how to replicate the success of the water barriers. And since then, Honduras and the Dominican Republic have also introduced their own versions. It's also been rolled out in Panama and Malaysia and Somalia, funded by USAID, highlighted at the UN General Assembly. So we feel like that's a good example of a bit of impact, real-world impact. Another example is this story about an MIT initiative to turn shipping containers into intensive care units during the pandemic. This video alone didn't get that much attention. It got about 700,000 views on Facebook and LinkedIn. But it also got about 2,000 offers of support and interest from the private sector. So a number of companies, including Arup, General Electric, Philips, Schneider Electric, are all now involved in scaling up this project. So 2 nice examples of real-world impact. OK, so what does it take to make these videos? Who does it and how? In our team, a single video needs about 5 people. It needs a scriptwriter, 2 video editors, a producer, and a coordinator. We produce 3 videos like this a day. We also do a bunch of other stuff, of course, YouTube videos and TikToks and cut downs for social stories. But this is what it takes to make, I would say, 1 video. You need, obviously, a scriptwriter to write it, 2 video editors to amass and compile and assemble the footage, a producer to sort of oversee that it all kind of looks together nicely and to handle the approvals process, and then a coordinator to be a final pair of eyes and to sort of take responsibility for the social video should anybody hate it and want it to be taken down. In a typical day at the forum, we create 3 of these videos, like I just said. There's also 2 TikToks, 1 social story, and that gets distributed across all social channels. So the team is actually a lot wider than just that. The team itself is roughly a mixture of video editors and ex-newspaper journalists. Unlike at a newspaper, though, where you might expect 1 single journalist to produce the video. They might go off and report on it, write it, script it, put it together, and then have it ready by the end of the day. We've kind of come up with a kind of conveyor belt approach where we have script writers who only write scripts and video editors who only assemble footage. And that allows people to kind of focus on their tasks and become really kind of good at them, really, I think. So that's how we work anyway. That allows us to produce a lot of videos at scale and at quality. Script writing, for instance. Script writing is incredibly difficult. Our videos look deceptively simple. Like the captions seem really sort of reductive, and you think, oh, well, somebody just put that together in a couple of minutes. But you wouldn't believe how many very experienced journalists have tried to write a script like that and failed, because it's incredibly difficult to condense that amount of technical information into something that is simple but also appealing, and only about 120 words long. OK, so that's the team. Now the workflow. This is really kind of what we prioritize. So first and foremost is ideas. And to produce as many videos as we do, we've had to sort of like call on the help of the wider digital team. So we ask everybody to submit about 5 to 10 videos every day, collectively, not each. And then we go through these videos in a daily editorial meeting. These meetings are incredibly gladiatorial. I mean, everybody has to sort of defend their ideas, and it gets shot down, and only the best ideas survive. So it's quite a good process. It really weeds out the nonsense, and you're left with a few ideas that might actually work. Then visuals, of course. I mean, it's a video. So we need good visuals, we need good footage. We rely quite heavily on stock footage. But of course, as you probably know, stock footage just looks like marketing material online, especially on social media. People don't have the patience to watch it. So we try as much as possible to ask for original footage from the people whose stories we're telling. Yes. Sorry, my slides, my notes are all back to front now. There we go. Newsroom ethos. Yes, we also learned to think like a newsroom. We're not a newspaper publication. We're obviously a communications department. But we found that in order to publish at scale and at quality, we needed to connect with each other constantly. So we have daily editorial meetings. We also schedule a weekly ideation meeting to go through more ideas. We have weekly planning meetings. We have monthly content review meetings. So it's a lot of meetings, which is, can be really annoying, but it really helps us to reach that level of coordination that's required. Number 4, centralize information. This is all about tools. This is about having Google spreadsheets and Slack channels and Airtables where you can see exactly where a product or a video is, at what stage it's at, who's working on it, and when it's going to be published. And then data. You can't manage what you can't measure. I'm sure you've heard that before. And data is completely fundamental to our work. So in addition to all the editorial meetings, we also have regular stats meetings where we review the performance of all our videos and make sure that our posting strategy is as smart as it can be. So what makes a great video? Not all videos do well, of course. Most of our videos, I'd say, probably average out at about 100,000 views in the first week. But every so often, you'll get one that resonates enough to get millions and millions and millions of views. And those really successful videos have one thing in common. They're all basically enlightening, relatable stories, efficiently told. So in order to weed out the best stories, what happens is that we will ask ourselves 4 key questions. Firstly, is it shareable? The videos that do best tend to give the viewer something. You're not selling them anything. You're not boring them with any kind of technical information. You're giving them something, information, advice, something to laugh at, something to feel good about. Is it relatable? Our most popular videos in our archive are the ones that people connect to on an emotional level, whether it's a heartwarming personal story or it could just be sort of tips for better sleeping. People are more likely to engage in a story if they see themselves in it. Number 3, is it informative? People seem to love big ideas. They love to be told. They love to have technical ideas that are usually quite inaccessible, whittled down and made more kind of digestible and easy to understand. So we do a lot of explainers. We get a lot of experts to kind of break down things, especially economic topics, into something a little bit more digestible. Number 4, strong visuals. Back to the visuals again. Without exception, our best videos are the ones that look good, usually with an arresting opening frame, because it's that first few seconds that are key in catching people's attention and keeping their interest. You've got to show them something they haven't seen before. So that goes back to the idea of getting original footage. So those are the 4 golden rules that we have when it comes to making videos that people are more likely to engage with. And this is my final slide. So I don't know if you've heard of Clay Shirky. He, as an author, he's kind of like an expert on organizations. And he wrote, "Here Comes Everybody" and "Cognitive Surplus." Actually, this quote was a line that my manager once said, and it really stuck in my imagination. It's basically, every organization is now a media organization. So what does this mean? It kind of means that every organization can now use digital technology to lean into the collective ideas and expertise and idiosyncrasies and projects and work of its staff in order to create stories and connect better with the world, to explain itself better to other organizations, to partners, to the world at large. So whether your goal is suggesting a helpful solution or raising awareness or raising funds, you're going to need an audience to tell your stories to. And I would say that videos are still, hands down, the best way to do that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna. Oh, it's okay. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Anna. So now, on to our second speaker of the day. We had a little change of plans. So instead of having Kira Kruglikova, we'll have our communication officer for the Division of Conference Management here with us. So Vadim Isakov, please, the floor is all yours. And thank you so much for stepping in.
Yes, hello, everybody. Since I'm going second, I'd like my presentation to be kind of, continuation of what UN presented, which was a very great, very informative presentation. And I'm going to just mention I'm going to mention a couple of examples what UN does to communicate with the audience in creative ways using the power of narrative and the power of videos, right? But first, just some of the statistics which, might not be apparent to a lot of people, even if you are in the video industry. But just imagine the influence of the video on the population, on different audiences around the world by, thinking about these numbers. So the one that I have, the amount of online videos watched by people has doubled in the last 4 years. The average person now watches 19 hours of video per week. It's 2 hours, more than 2 hours actually, every day. 2 hours every day, an average person. And it's not even a heavy consumer. This is up from only 10.5 hours 4 years ago. So 500 hours of videos are uploaded to YouTube every minute worldwide. 500 of videos every minute. On Instagram, which has 1 billion active users, 95 million photos and videos are shared every day. 95 million photos and videos. And TikTok, another popular video sharing app, has over 1 billion active monthly users who watched around 24 hours of content on the app each month, right? In his latest presentation on Metaverse, this popular video of Mark Zuckerberg, he was saying that video became the primary mean of communication in digital world. The primary mean of communication in digital world. And I was talking to my colleague who said, yes, but I never watched than 5 minutes of videos every day. And my another colleague said, yes, but I kind of watch hours of videos every evening. So, I mean, that's kind of interesting distribution depending on the age as well. But coming back to the UN, it's interesting how the evolution of communicating with the audiences in the UN went through depending on the age of the video, the age of technologies. One of my favorite video was I'm 40. That was released when the UN was celebrating its 40th anniversary. And at that time, the creative video was a guy on the motorcycle who is 40 years old. And he's going around, and he's representing the UN because he's working at the UN. And he's dynamic, he's full of hope. He's on my motorcycle in New York City going to his work. And he's 40, and I'm 40, and I'm full of hopes. And this is the UN where I work. And this is full of hope, and how the director tied the dreams and hopes of the young organization as the UN at the age of 40 to dreams of hopes of this person at the age of 40. So that was one of the ways to communicate the message of the UN to the public. One of the most innovative recent examples that I want to mention is the first VR movie that UN has released in 2015. It's called Clouds Over Sidra. And it's an amazing VR experience. If you haven't watched it, it's a day condensed into 10 minutes of a Syrian girl in a refugee camp. And the girl's name is Sidra. And you are put in the shoes of a spectator who follows this girl, Sidra, through the day, and she gives you a tour of this refugee camp and tells you where she lives, how she interacts with her peers, how she attends the school, and you're right there, and you feel kind of like you are her peer who is always with her all the time, excuse me. And this experience was amazing because I know many people who watched this movie, the delegates, the interns, students, people who work at the Palais de Nation, who watched this movie in 2015 here in Palais when it was presented. And all of them was struck, was moved by the emotions that this movie created, right? It's one of the most amazing, innovative experience for the UN to communicate through video. Another one, more recent, that I'm sure most of you watched was Don't Choose Extinction movie. It's about a dinosaur, computer-generated dinosaur, who is going through the aisles of General Assembly and finally takes the podium and tells people not to choose extinction. Short video, but the point of this video was to raise the awareness about fossil fuel subsidies and the effect they take on the climate. So that was a very popular video. I think combined the amount of views, if you take different platforms, it was 7 million views on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, right? Very popular. And the most recent example of UN communicating to its audiences through creative narrative, through creative videos, was Unboxed Me campaign that was launched only months ago in India with UNAIDS. And the aim of this campaign, the aim of this video that we will watch shortly, is to draw attention to the rights and the situation of transgender people in India. And it's very moving, very creative approach. Unbox Me plays on two meaning of these words in internet age. First, it's a traditional meaning. Many children in India have these boxes, what they use to store their precious belongings. But in this content, in content of transgender children, boxes represent their hiding themselves, they're hiding their feelings, being afraid of the society. And of course, unbox is also something that is very popular online when people order gadgets, toys, and start unboxing them. And those videos, get millions of views. So what the creators did, they took the boxes of these transgender kids, persons, and they asked people of influence in India to unbox them on their social media live. And unboxing them, they're trying to put themselves in the shoes of this person whose box they're unboxing. And being influencers, being famous people in India, by doing this, they create the sense of inclusion, the sense of acceptance. And again, this is a very, very moving experience. The video is a couple of minutes long, so I would ask my colleagues to play it so we better understand what I mean. And again, this is the most recent example of how the UN uses the power of narrative and storytelling and video to communicate with the audiences. So, up for video.
जो मैं हूँ वो उन चीजों के अंदर छुपी हुई थी और उसके अंदर एक मेरी मम्मा की लिपस्टिक थी,
गुड़िया थी, ज्वेलरीज, कितनी बेचैन होके.
As a kid, I did not understand what a trans person is. I always felt I'm a woman. But I was not allowed to share it with anyone.
लड़के का लड़की बनना, तो इसीलिए मुझे मतलब मार पड़ती थी, इसीलिए मुझे छुपाना पड़ता था ये सब. पहले मैं घर को क्यूट कर चुकी हूँ. तुमसे मिली.
फैमिली की याद सबको आती है कि मैं जिंदा भी हूँ या मर गया. खून तो उन्हीं का हूँ.
तुमको क्या थी खबर थी मैं कितनी अकेली. ये चूड़ियां मैं बचपन में पहनती थी. ये सब मतलब देखकर ना मैं थोड़ी इमोशनल हो रही हूँ.
So I'm gonna open this. It says Santosh Kumar.
This is Lakshman's box.
A razor, a nail polish,
A lovely bracelet.
And we also have a little note.
I like to look in the mirror when no one else is looking. Let's look at children in the way that they look at themselves. Let no child have to hide from the world.
Not to forget to click the button. Those are just several examples of what UN does to communicate with their audience through video. And by saying this, I'm looking forward to continue our conversation here in this room with other speakers, and I'm giving the floor to our moderator. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vadim. Very emotional video. I honestly got a little bit emotional myself by watching it. Anyways, let's continue with the show. Our last speaker for the day today is Isaias Hernandez. He's joining us all the way from New York, so good morning to him. Isaias, are we audible?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's phenomenal. So
Awesome.
Isaias Hernandez is first and foremost an environmental educator. He's also the creator of Queer Brown Vegan and, of course, a TikTok content creator. So Isaias, thank you so much for joining us, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you so much again for having me, and welcome everyone. Thank you so much again for being here, and today's presentation is going to be looking in communication for good. If we can go to the next slide, please. So a lot of the work that I do as a digital communicator in the environmental space is one recognizing, as someone who did environmental science, is how can I communicate climate change online to get people involved with climate action. So one of the biggest things I realized back in 2018 and 19 is that there was a huge problem in which the modern media, mainstream media movements we're not covering the climate crisis, right? In 2019, broadcast networks in the United States only covered around 0.7% of the climate, and that meant that there was lack of investment going into climate storytelling or reporting to the public about climate change and related issues. And some of the coverage that was actually covered in that 0.7% were often natural disasters, whether that was a wildfire, a hurricane, or flooding, and other natural events that have happened. If we can go to the next slide, please. And so climate education to me is an impactful tool to kind of create conversations on social media, especially for future generations, especially the ones that are also younger than me, as I identify more as a millennial than Generation Z. And Pearson's Global Learning Survey, I had collaborated with them on a project a few months ago. They had worked on this survey, surveying around people from the ages of 12 to 24. And it found out that the top 3 sources in which people were learning about climate-related issues were from the media, which was 44%, social media, 25%, and films and TV, which is 22%. And as our other previous speakers have noted, is that people are visual learners, meaning that they're wanting to engage through a humanization process. And for many of us that are younger generations, we kind of enter this digital era where there was already computers, tablets, and more interactive forms of learning. And this is kind of creates these pathways and connections for young environmentalists to be able to create those interconnections of why it's important to be an environmentalist, or why it's important to get involved in academia or institutions or policy work or different types of systems that exist. Next slide, please. And so when a lot of people ask me, what does good content look like, or what does good content mean? And, as an environmental educator, the reason why I created Queer Brown Vegan as an educational platform was that the fact of many organizations during the early 2014 to 2018 weren't as seriously invested in climate education, or did not see the power of social media influencers as a way to communicate climate change. And so when I try to communicate climate change online, I try to be concise, meaning that I get to the point, right? Example of this is the IPCC report, Working Group 2 and the Working Group 3 report that came out recently. What are some of the main facts out of that, key takeaways that I'm able to communicate with my audience within 60 seconds? The next thing I think about is how digestible is this information, meaning that how do we break down this information? And part of that digestible process is using some of my scientific background and collaborations with scientists and policymakers to understand that the language that I'm going to be using is accessible to the general public, and also respects the works of the scientists and those who have put so much endless research into this material. And the last thing is making it purposeful, meaning that when I create climate education, I do not create sad stories. What I create is solution-based and justice-oriented in narratives, meaning that I make sure that my audience are the solution makers. So often at times I don't always provide the solution, but I give them the steps and the resources to be asking these critical questions of how else can you extend yourself to systemic interventions, whether that's going through United Nations, whether that's joining your local government policies. These are all important actions that I think that a lot of people feel disempowered because of the lack of communication and the lack of resources and how inaccessible many academic institutions that really talk about this information is really hard for the general public to understand. And so what does that mean to make a bridge? Next slide, please. And so what we're going to see right now is a video about a collaboration I did with the United Nations. It was for the He for She campaign. And part of my work as a climate educator is to work with different existing governmental bodies. I recently worked with the U.S. Department of Energy to promote their clean energy initiative. I have worked with Climate Power, which is mobilizing young environmental voters in the United States, and now extending myself to do more projects because, as we all know, and as other speakers have mentioned, is that there is so much research that institutions like the World Economic Forum, the United Nations have done so much of this research to talk about these issues, yet often it doesn't reach the public. And so teaming up and collaborating with influencers like myself, we can create a video like what we're going to see. So if we can go to the next slide and watch the video. Impacts of climate change, but do they talk about the gender disparity that comes with it? Around 80% of people displaced by climate change are women, and women only account for 28% of voices in climate media coverage, which that needs to change. Yet only 3% of aid to address climate change impacts specifies gender equality as an objective. This March is International Women's Month, and I'm so happy to partner with He for She to promote their efforts in highlighting the role gender equality plays in solving climate change. Women are more likely to be impacted by climate change, especially in rural areas, while often holding the knowledge needed to adapt and mitigate climate impacts in local environments. Things like access to resources, training, credit, and decision-making power have historically been limited for women, but to solve the climate crisis, we need to be able to help anyone deliver solutions to the table. Yeah, and as you can see, there was a recent video that we just watched right now, and that was kind of an example of how I've been able to kind of communicate information, especially since there's so much data to be said within that video. But I think one of the most things that has really helped me, because I'm an individual, right, as a content creator, I don't necessarily have an editing team, I don't have a research team, I don't have a the best, studio to be filming certain things. A lot of the times what really captures people is the narrative of what you're saying. And so I think for myself as a climate communicator, I really try to make sure that what I'm communicating to the audience is as if I'm having a conversation with a friend to encourage them to learn more about these issues. And so when we're kind of applying the practice of climate communication using social media, there are a lot of important tools and steps to remember. So if we can go to the next slide, please. And yeah, a lot of people ask, what type of climate communication engages audience? And I think it varies, right? Per community, per institution, per brand, and whichever you're trying to communicate, right? Like users want to see real individuals. What is really great about TikTok specifically is that video quality doesn't have to be the highest quality out there, right? You get to, as long as you're getting your point across and taking your phone out and to shoot, and people are able to understand that, then you're doing the job correctly. I think that, gone are the days of these like perfect filters and selfies on Instagram and, the perfect video quality for individuals. Like, a lot of us don't have that infrastructure. We're not nonprofits, we're not organizations. And so a lot of the work that I do is very self-funded, and so it's funded by my community members. And so I try my best to use the best resources out there, considering natural lighting, considering how I'm going to be speaking, how I'm going to be constructing the script. And what I always tell people is that if you're trying to communicate something clearly with an individual, especially younger folks to be joining these movements, is that you need to talk what is the most important thing about to you, meaning that you don't need every person watching the video. You don't need your video to go extremely viral. What you need is the right audience. And something that I kind of tell my community is that on TikTok specifically, I've been able to connect with certain professors who have watched my work. And that is something that I didn't know, that academic institution professors were on TikTok just looking to see what people are talking about when it comes to climate change online. And a lot of the work that I do is to kind of create that pathway for younger people so then they can get curious and they can become innovators and they can eventually become solution makers in this climate space. So if we can go to the next slide, please. And something I always emphasize with everyone is collaboration is key, meaning that building community online is not an easy task. When I first started back in 2019 online on Queer Brown Vegan, I had a very unique experience just trying to navigate the space, specifically because there wasn't that many environmental creators online. And since 2022, that has exploded. And if we can go to the next slide, please, I've been able to really collaborate with so many. One of the recent collaborations I did is I went to COP26 here in Glasgow, Scotland, and that was the first ever COP I had ever been to since I wanted to go since I was in college. And because I collaborated with scientists, institutions, grassroots orgs, journalists, artists, businesses, frontline community leaders, I was able to get connected and eventually got a pass to attend COP26 on behalf with an organization. And one of the things I always emphasize is that if your team is struggling to communicate climate change when it comes to climate conferences, specifically the most important ones like COP conferences that really are the ones that bring everyone together, then you need to be working alongside young people or young environmental professionals like myself to be able to be in those rooms, because we are able to dilute that information and to simplify it in a more accessible way so it can reach larger communities and they can feel a part of these conferences. So I always welcome any type of collaborations with any types of individuals on that end. And if we can go to the next slide, please. And a lot of people ask, how do you communicate climate change online? Like, what is your examples of success? And, I don't really measure success through numbers or metrics. What I end up doing actually is I look at the existing systems of what we need to be talking about. And one of those things actually is using comedic relief. I found that comedy has played a huge role in trying to create conversations. And I found that the average adult does not laugh as much as they need to in their daily lives. And it is another reminder for people to understand that the climate crisis is not just doom and gloom. It's also part of community building, laughter, and also mobilizing together. And if we go to the next slide, please. And yeah, if you want to stay connected with me, I really hope that, you can follow me at Queer Brown Vegan or on LinkedIn or connect with me to find out more about my work. But if you have any questions, we'll definitely hold it on for the next Q&A. So thank you so much again for having me here.
Thank you so much, Isaias. Okay, so that is the end of our presentations for today. However, we're going to start with our Q&A session. So once again, I invite you all to go head on to menti.com. The code is 99823703 for those that actually don't have the QR code. So I repeat, 99823703. So while our lovely audience sends in their questions, we're going to rearrange the sitting area over here to make it a little bit more agreeable for our speakers. We're actually going to be sitting down for the next 20 minutes. So see you all in a couple of minutes while we rearrange. Thank you. Okay, so if I can just ask our wonderful speakers to join us here on the stage. We're going to start up with our Q&A. Isaias, are you still with us? Because I guess the first question will be for you, actually.
Yes, I'm still here.
So for those who can't see, our first question is, how can TikTok be a pertinent platform for international organizations without turning too entertaining? So how about we have a discussion from the UN side and then from Isaias, maybe? So Miladin, could we please have your opinion on this?
This is definitely one of the challenges we are facing as the UN. Big parts of the UN system have adopted TikTok and they're producing engaging content, but it is a fine line. You want to attract attention, you want to entertain, but then some of the topics we are dealing with are quite serious. Refugees, for example, or hunger in big parts of the world. So UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency, has done some great campaigns with refugees from around the world. For example, showing how young refugees have grown up to be what they want. So they show young person dreaming, let's say, about becoming a pilot, and then 10 years later wearing a pilot uniform, or a doctor, or an engineer. So there are ways, but I would say UN has the duty to pay even more attention to the production of TikTok videos in order not to appear too funny, I would say, or too trivial. It's a fine line we need to walk, because a lot of the work we do is quite serious, and we deal with some really grave situations.
Vadim, do you have anything else to add to that?
No, I think Miladin is right. I don't think that being entertaining is a problem here. I think more, as the question says, too entertaining, right? I think you always speak to the language that your audience speaks, and if you're addressing the audience in the most effective way, giving, obviously, keeping in mind the issues and making sure that you're appropriate and you do not offend anybody. If the most effective way to communicate with the audience is through entertainment, then you go through entertainment. But obviously, as Miladin said, we have to be very careful.
Do you have anything to add, Anna, about this?
Well, we started experimenting with TikTok about 2 to 3 years ago, and it was really hard at first because we wanted to do all the dancey memes and the lip syncing, and we wanted to talk to the TikTok audience on their level. Then we thought, but we're the World Economic Forum. How are we going to do that? How do you? And we thought, who's going to be the face of that? Who's going to be the young? So we got some of the young kids in our office to do some of, some funny videos. But in the end, it was the anti-TikTok stuff, not the anti-TikTok stuff, but the not very traditionally TikTok-friendly content that did quite well for us. What we did was we just took some of our most popular videos and cut them down into shorter videos for TikTok. They were quite newsy. They didn't really have people in them. So by all sort of the laws of TikTok, they shouldn't have done very well, but they often did incredibly well, which proved to us that there is an audience out there for some serious news content or slightly more worthy content. It doesn't all have to be so much fun.
Okay, great. Isaias, would you like to add something about this? I know the question is about organizations, but maybe you have an idea of how to avoid making it too entertaining?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that with international organizations and who I've consulted in my past experience is that when you're dealing with very severe topics, right? I cover some about like ecofascism or, very, very deep issues within the environmental movement. And when that comes to this level of seriousness and professionalism, I always tell them that what is the story that they're trying to specifically create? Meaning that, like, how are you presenting this information that is bite-sized? Meaning that what are some of the common events in history that many people can relate to, or providing some simple and small facts that hooks people on into that material. I also think that when you were trying to say, well, it's too entertaining or it's not serious enough, I think also reminding yourself, TikTok is generally used by many younger people, and one of the things is that a lot of the young people use it because they were so tired of being traumatized on other platforms to seeing doom and gloom, or look at this disaster of someone growing up in poverty. It's not so much that their narrative isn't important, but it's more about how do we empower the individual within that narrative to recognize that they have a voice in their conversations, meaning that it's not just about their sad story, it's about their passions, it's about their interests of what they're doing, it's about how they take us around in their lives and show us how it looks like for them. I think that's something that a lot of the times organizations are afraid to do, to give camera, to give the individual to be like, can you document how your day looks like? And I think giving that realistic documentary experience allows people to actually connect with the individual themselves.
Okay. Okay, great. I think that sums it up for our first question of the day. We leave also the floor open for the people in the room. If the audience in the room actually has a question, just raise your hand and our lovely team behind the scenes will give you a microphone. Do we have any questions in the room? Okay, so one over here.
Some of the UN stories can be pretty dramatic when we talk about war, about climate change. And what's your experience in terms of the tone of the stories and in telling these dramatic stories versus telling positive stories or solution-type stories?
Miladin, would you like to take this one?
Sure. I mean, part of our job as the UN with the global presence and the presence in some of the most difficult areas of the world really is to communicate what is happening there, be it hunger, be it starvation, be it attacks on hospitals and schools. So we don't have the luxury not to talk about it. But at the same time, you rightly point out that people are sometimes simply tired of doom and gloom, and there is a lot of bad news in the world, from wars to the pandemics and so on. So one thing that we are trying, in addition to reporting on all of these terrible things that are happening, is also providing some hope and some solutions. So so-called hope journalism is a relatively recent concept, and we are trying to also use it in our communication. So saying, yes, climate change, climate crisis is serious, but here are some ways, practical, concrete ways, something that Isaiah also said, that you can do to make things better. There is a big refugee crisis in Europe right now, but these are concrete things that you can do in your community, or if you cannot help in the community, here's how you can donate or help online. So we try to connect the terrible things that are happening around the world with some practical tips, actionable tips, also as Isaiah said, to give people chance that they feel empowered rather than powerless to do their bit. So combination of the two.
Okay, great. So as we're running a little bit out of time, maybe we can have one last Mentimeter question. So can we see what else is said? Okay. Our next question is, from your point of view, what is the ideal length of an informative video? Thank you. So what do you think, Anna?
It depends on the platform. So obviously on YouTube, anywhere between 10 and 20 minutes is great. The algorithm will reward you for that. But in terms of interest, well, in terms of length and platform, Twitter, nice and short. Most of the social platforms, anywhere around a minute is probably as much as anybody's attention span can handle. But it depends how interesting the video is. You know, some information is very different to other information. If it's too technical, a little bit sad, then people aren't going to stick with it. But if it's genuinely surprising and interesting, then you can go for as long as you like.
Well, given the fact that unfortunately we've run out of time, I think we'll have to leave it at that for the questions. We'll probably have to, I mean, we still have a coffee that is outside that has been actually gifted to us by the Division of Conference Management. So for those that are in the room, you can, of course, go out and keep on asking questions to our wonderful speakers. But how about, just for fun's sake, can we, by any chance, have one last Mentimeter question just to make sure that our audience online doesn't feel forgotten? Thank you so much to our production team behind the scenes. Okay, so our last question of the day will be, which software would you recommend for beginners in video making? So what answers do you have for that, our wonderful speakers?
I mean, two softwares which I would say are relatively easy are iMovie for Mac users, and then Adobe. There's different versions of Adobe, so maybe simpler versions of Adobe. Those two are what we sometimes use at the beginner level, I would say.
I had some fun with Watch It a few years ago. Do you guys know Watch It? It's, you can download it onto your browser, and I think it's free. And it's just really user-friendly and loads of fun. It's a bit like iMovie.
And Asaz, do you use anything in particular? Any software that you would recommend for a beginner?
Yeah, if you're a mobile phone user, I'd recommend InShot, or I think the other one is called Video Shop. And then, like, for any YouTube videos that I've produced, it's all been edited through Adobe Premiere Pro.
Okay. Well, I guess that this is the end of our event for today. First of all, thank you so much for our wonderful speakers for joining us. I think they deserve a huge round of applause. And now the only thing that we can say is we're very sorry to leave you here. We'll have another event on the 17th of May about mindfulness and how to be a mindful leader. So that is something, well, that everyone is interested in. We also want to thank Kruglikova, who actually had to leave the room at some point, but we are really, really thankful for her, still being here. So thank you so much. And what else are we going to say? Well, basically, if you're interested in what else the Commons are coming up with, just visit us on commons.ungeneva.org. We have a lot of new events coming up. Also, don't hesitate on following UN Geneva, both Twitter and Facebook accounts. Well, in this case, Miladin, who knows all about this. Also, don't hesitate following UN Geneva, the UN Library and Archives Twitter and Facebook account. We post on a regular basis and on a great variety of topics, so you're sure to find something that is right up your alley. And now all we have to say is, once again, thank you to our wonderful speakers. Thank you to you, our lovely audience, for joining us here today, both on site and online. And hopefully we'll see you soon for our new event coming up on the 17th of May. And until then, goodbye, stay safe, and see you soon at the Commons.